Maggie Smith.
Dame Maggie Smith is acting aristocracy.
She's a very remarkable woman.
Some actors have got it and some haven't.
I think Maggie Smith is one of the greatest ever.
The star of over 60 films and 70 plays, Maggie has been delighting us for decades.
She can do anything. Anything at all as an actor. She can just do anything.
From Hogwarts Professor McGonagall and her perfectly pitched put-downs,
babbling, bumbling band of baboons.
The part is so completely right for her. It's just a joy.
to the scene-stealing Dowager of Downton.
She can go from being really hilarious to being very moving, I mean, deeply moving.
You must choose either death or life.
Notoriously private and famously fiery.
Oh, Maggie can be formidable. She absolutely can.
Tonight, we salute the life and work of a true legend.
Exquisite, erinaceous, and incandescent.
Maggie Smith had and has that little bit extra.
Over her long and distinguished career, Dame Maggie Smith has played an astonishing array of characters, from the prim Miss Jean Brodie to the homeless eccentric Miss Shepherd in The Lady in the Van. And in 2001, she surprised everybody by donning a giant witch's hat to play the stern Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter movies, giving a magnificently starchy, straight-laced portrayal that belies a warm heart beneath.
We made it. Can you imagine the look on our McGonagall's face if we were late? That was bloody brilliant.
Oh, thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley. Perhaps it would be more useful if I were to transfigure Mr. Potter and yourself into a pocket watch. That way one of you might be on time.
We got lost.
Then perhaps a map. I trust you don't need one to find your seats.
I think the thing about the Harry Potter films is it's the most dazzling assembly of British acting talent. I mean, Alan Rickman, who does the most extraordinary things with diction, and Michael Gambon and Miriam Margolyes. It's just a dazzling ensemble.
I didn't know it was going to be such an extraordinary explosion of success. And I'm very grateful. And I think probably that Maggie's grateful too, and all of us who were in it. It's a wonderful thing to be able to please the public, and the public all over the world in the way that this did.
I didn't take to the Harry Potter films instantly. I did because my kids liked it, and so I kind of got into it. But the minute I knew that Dame Maggie Smith was in it, I was gone. I was like, yeah, I'll watch this. It's great. And for the first time you see her kind of evolve from this cat, you just go, and she keeps the qualities of that as well. She keeps elements of that. Her voice is fantastic.
We have to see Professor Dumbledore immediately.
I'm afraid Professor Dumbledore is not here. He received an urgent owl from the Ministry of Magic and left immediately for London.
He's gone, but this is important. This is about the Philosopher's Stone.
How do you know?
Someone's going to try and steal it.
I don't know how you three found out about the stone, but I assure you it is perfectly well protected. Now, would you go back to your dormitories? Quietly.
Obviously, she's playing something in her mind that's even older than she is, you know, or timeless. She does this sort of slightly raspy thing with it, which is beautiful. And she has that balance of being able to talk to the children in a particular way.
You wait here.
Ingredient in...
Professor Quirrell, excuse me. Could I borrow wood for a moment, please?
Oh, yes, of course. The vampire...
Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I have found you a seeker.
She was really saying, look, I can be a respected stage presence and Oscar-winning actor. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to say no to big-budget franchises. Why not? You've earned the right by this point. You've proved yourself.
Just as the original Harry Potter movies came to an end, Dame Maggie Smith signed up for what would become yet another global phenomenon, taking a major role in a British television costume drama. That drama was Downton Abbey, and her character was the iron-willed Dowager Countess of Grantham, a lady of ferociously fiery wit, with a limitless supply of the most entertaining and caustic quips.
He doesn't want to pester you, so he's asked if I could give another luncheon party. Oh, dear. Oh, why the lamentation? You don't have to see him if you don't want. Well, you make it sound so easy. There's nothing simpler than avoiding people you don't like. Avoiding one's friends, that's the real test.
Julian Fellowes wrote the Oscar-winning screenplay for 2001's Gosford Park. And following its success, he went on to create Downton Abbey, with Maggie Smith as his first choice of actress, to play the domineering Dowager Countess of Grantham.
I mean, actually, looking back, I'm sort of quite surprised she did it, really. I mean, I don't know if I should say that, but you know, it was going to be reasonably populist television.
That gave the whole thing the stamp of approval, didn't it, really, her doing it? Although some people were snooty about it, and maybe they were right to be, but I don't think they were. And she loved doing it.
And it was Maggie's delivery of barbed one-liners that made every episode of Downton worth watching.
You should go now. Much more, and we may feel awkward when we meet, which we are bound to do.
I think not, Miss Crookshank. Not if I see you first.
I think it was quite a big decision for her to do it, actually. I mean, we were very, very keen that she should, because we knew, I knew she'd be very good in the part, but that wasn't only it. We also knew that it would make the programme smell of a certain kind of quality.
Well, just the presence, you know, just your look, just your very being there gives what you're in some extra depth and some extra weight.
It was a wonderful experience, and I knew most of the grown-ups from before. So part of it was just like going, particularly when you don't have so much responsibility. It's a bit like going to a party with a whole lot of mates. I think it also helped that we'd known each other before, so that we could just sort of slip into a mother and daughter without having to work too hard.
Just tell me, what were you and Edith discussing in such a huddle?
Well, it is very hard.
Rosamond, you're addressing your mother, not the committee of the Women's Institute.
I'm afraid you've read somewhere that rudeness in old age is amusing, which is quite wrong, you know?
It's about the child, isn't it? That is the secret you share. We both know you are not leaving my house until I learn the truth.
Downton ran for 52 episodes over 6 years, giving ample opportunity for Maggie to fully develop her domineering dowager.
By the way, how is Spratt?
Well, I think, why do you ask?
He wasn't there to open the door. I wondered if he might be ill.
Oh, no, he's not ill. No, he's in Liverpool. His niece got married yesterday and Spratt had to take her down the aisle.
Oh, seems rather unlikely to think of Spratt with a private life.
Yes, unlikely and extremely inconvenient.
But you can't begrudge him that, surely. Servants are human beings, too.
Yes, but preferably only on their days off.
I think She's settled into a mainstay of matriarchs who challenge people and scrutinise other characters. But when you see her heart open in a scene, it's very, very powerful.
I remember she did a wonderful thing. I wrote it, but I thought she did it wonderfully. When Sybil was dead, she walked across the hall, and before she went into the drawing room, she sort of stopped. Sort of pulled herself together. It was marvellous.
But the Dowager was at her finest when cutting the opposition down to size.
She knows how to deliver a line. She knows how to drawl and then snap. Julian Fellows has very kindly provided her with some delightful lines.
It looks like she's throwing her lines away, but she's not. She comes into the atmosphere and everything changes. It goes up. It just goes up a couple of notches. It gets better.
Sometimes even the delivery of the nasty lines sort of just slightly undercut when other people were speaking, and then they only realised later they'd been insulted.
There are plenty of hours in the day. And of course I'll have the weekend.
We'll discuss this later. We mustn't bore the ladies.
What is a weekend?
That came from a funny story about one of my great aunts who was talking to a very uppity young man who she thought was rather tiresome. And he said, "Oh, I'm doing something for the weekend." And she just wanted to put him down. So she said, "What's the weekend?" And he was
Coming up, we go back to the beginning when Maggie is swept off her feet at the National Theatre.
He was tall, he was handsome, he was wild. She met him, and I think there was a coup de foudre.
And things get ugly with Laurence Olivier.
He wanted her with him because she was that good, but he didn't want her there.
He just slapped me rather hard in Othello.
Maggie Smith was born in Ilford, Essex in 1934, but the family relocated to Oxford when she was 5 years old, where everything changed for her, recalls Michael Coveney, her friend and biographer.
In Oxford, she was lucky enough to find a teacher, which we all have. We all have a teacher who changed our lives, and this was a woman called Dorothy Bartholomew, who was a drama teacher, came into the school to give verse-speaking lessons. And she could not believe it. When Maggie did her first recital, it was perfect.
We were both at the Oxford High School for Girls in the 40s and 50s. Dorothy Bartholomew taught her English, as taught me English, and she was admired, but not, I think, liked. She did not like the school at all.
Relieved to put her school days behind her, Maggie joined the Oxford Playhouse Theatre, and in 1956, something extraordinary happened when she was spotted performing in a Playhouse production in the West End and was offered the opportunity of a lifetime.
And as a result of this Oxford review, Maggie Smith, then Margaret Smith, was invited to join a company taking a review to New York. New faces. She was a new face, but she had to have a new name because there was already a Margaret Smith on the books. That's how she became Maggie Smith. And she opened on Broadway at 21.
When you think of Maggie Smith today, you can't imagine her as a sort of young, threadbare actress, but I think she was that for quite a long time.
She was suddenly cast adrift in New York, in Manhattan, and I think she did feel pretty bleak and lonely. And then someone came to the rescue. It was the biggest English female star of the day. The hottest show in the world in 1956 was My Fair Lady on Broadway, starring Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews.
She was scooped up by, of all people, Julie Andrews, who said, you know, come to tea, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to help you get your ducks in a row, and then subsequently threw her 21st birthday party for her. And they became lifelong friends.
Not a bad start. 21 years of age, brought up in Oxford, suddenly you're on Broadway, and the biggest star on Broadway, Julie Andrews, is your mate.
Returning to London, Maggie made regular appearances in the West End and took small parts in movies. But her career reached a turning point in 1963, when she landed a minor role in the lavish Burton and Taylor movie, The VIPs.
Maggie had not at that point become a really strong screen presence. You know, she was still more of a theatre star, but it was increasingly obvious that she had that ingredient, that sort of intimate personality that pulls you into people's predicaments. And that is the trick of screen acting.
First of all, I love The VIPs because it's Terence Rattigan, and it is a sparkling, sparkling script. But also it's fascinating from Maggie's point of view because it's the total antithesis of her film work. She's a very shy, love-struck character in love with her boss, who's an Australian business tycoon.
Very kind of meek character, really, not particularly outspoken or eccentric or any of the things that we might expect from the later years of Maggie Smith. At this point, she's still quite restrained and quite quiet.
Do you like your hair that way? Why did you change it?
Oh, about 3 weeks ago.
Well, let's have another go at this.
I'll be squiffy.
Marvellous. That I should like to see, Miss Mead, just once. What am I talking about, just once? If I don't see it tonight, I suppose I never will.
I'd work for you for nothing, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Although only on screen in The VIPs for a matter of minutes, it was dawning on the great actors of the day that here was an emerging talent to be reckoned with. And beware of.
Richard Burton accused her of stealing his one scene with her, and he said it wasn't just theft, it was grand larceny. She had a scene with Richard Burton, she just acted him off the screen.
If only you knew the fight he'd put up these last 3 months.
I can well imagine. To fight Amalgamated Motors would be quite a battle, Miss Mead, even for me.
And until today, well, a few hours ago even, he'd won it. And then someone let him down and he had to write a cheque and there's no money to cover it. And now this fog. I feel so sorry for him, Mr. Andrews. He's such a wonderful man and he's so young. I'm sorry, you must think I'm mad. It's just that we've been through so much. And tonight, you see, I had some champagne.
Does he know how much you love him?
As The VIPs hit cinema screens, Maggie Smith came to the attention of another of the era's legendary actors, Laurence Olivier, who lured her back on stage as a member of his new National Theatre Company. But, like Richard Burton before him, he soon found himself upstaged.
I always get the sense that Maggie Smith just comes in and nails it, and in a way makes it look easy, makes it look effortless. It's not, but that's how she makes it look. So you could understand how Burton, and I think Laurence Olivier felt the same way at the National Theatre. They were frustrated by someone who could just outdo them so easily.
He knew when he met his equal, and he wanted her with him because she was that good, but he didn't want her there.
Actor Simon Callow, who has worked with Maggie many times, remembers seeing her first perform on stage alongside Laurence Olivier.
He was not going to cede any base to any other actor on the stage, and he had to be best, you know. I mean, that was just wired into his temperament. So when he came across someone as extraordinary as Maggie, he absolutely acknowledged her greatness. He saw all of that, but I think there was a competitive element. I mean, that's part of what he was.
Their strained relationship reached a climax during a performance at the National Theatre, as Maggie candidly reveals during this frank interview in 2002.
He just slapped me rather hard in Othello.
Are you serious?
No, I am serious.
He just slapped you
He
in
said, "Out, devil," and gave me a good
And you
thwack
thought it
round
had
the
more
head, and I
power
went
behind
going
it. You thought it
complete-
had more power than was necessary.
Yeah, well, I was knocked out. I saw a lot of stars. I remember saying I saw more stars that night than I'd seen at the National for a long time.
As tempers frayed on stage, behind the scenes, the temperature was also rising.
At the National Theatre, she met actors who are still among her best friends, people like Derek Jacobi. But she also met Robert Stevens. He was tall, he was handsome, he was wild. She met him, and I think there was a coup de foudre.
The couple wed in 1967, started a family, and within 2 years, Maggie Smith's professional world was turned upside down when she took the lead in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, the film that would make her name, turning in a mesmerizing portrayal of an unconventional teacher in a conventional school, starring alongside her dashing new husband.
I hear I must congratulate you on the birth of another child.
Yes, another daughter.
Have you never heard of Mary Stopes, architect for constructive birth control and racial progress?
Ah, yes, an estimable woman. But you see, my church enjoins me to go forth and be fruitful.
I am aware of your unfortunate affiliation with the Church of Rome. I doubt, however, whether that body gives the same interpretation to go forth that you do.
She's not a veteran at this point. She's not a major star at this point. But you watch her and she owns it. She completely owns that character. She completely owns the film. Such confidence, such self-belief.
The prime of Miss Jean Brodie is one of those rare films where, especially at the time that it came out, had a female lead that was not to everyone's taste. She was an eccentric woman who loved teaching. That was her life, that was her passion.
All my pupils are the creme de la creme. Give me a girl at an impressionable age and she is mine for life. You girls are my vocation. If I were to receive a proposal of marriage tomorrow from the Lord Lion, King of Arms, I would decline it. I am dedicated to you in my prime.
Jean Brodie won Maggie her first Oscar, her towering performance ensuring it remains the film still most readily associated with her.
I think Maggie recognises that that retina of that lens is very distrustful of dishonesty, but it can take bigness in spades because there are, of course, enormous characters in life, and Jean Brodie was one of them.
Coming up, we reveal how Maggie's not to be messed with.
Oh, Maggie can be formidable. She absolutely can.
And we discover her lighter side.
She's a very funny human being, I have to tell you. She's hilarious.
She can deliver one-liners well. She delivers them with such confidence.
Right, Gilbert. I think sexual intercourse is in order.
The spectacular success of the prime of Miss Jean Brodie was a game-changer for Maggie Smith. But it cast a shadow over her marriage to actor Robert Stevens, as her reputation began to eclipse his.
He was literally a great actor and just didn't get the breaks. And she got him. So it must have been awful to be at home together. The phone rings for her, doesn't ring for him. People are clamoring for her, they're not clamoring for him.
He, I think, had a drink problem. He wasn't easy. I think he may have also had a temper problem, a temperamental problem too. And I think as time went by, it became impossible for her. She's a hugely gifted person. Of course she is. But she's actually a very straightforward person. But eventually, it was just too much.
Maggie walked away from her marriage to Robert Stevens after 6 years, taking sons Christopher and Toby with her. In 1976, Maggie relocated to Canada when she was offered the chance to perform at a theatre festival in Ontario. She went with her sons and her new husband, the playwright Beverly Cross, a long-time admirer she had known since her days in Oxford in the 1950s, who had walked back into her life within months of her separating from Robert, and married her when the divorce came through in 1975.
She was able to calm down and recover from the turbulence of the marriage with Robert. And of course, Beverly is an absolute rock. And that's how she described him. He was her rock. He walked out on his previous family and became dad to the boys. And he stayed in Canada with her.
Maggie remained there for 4 years, combining theatre work with comic roles in big-budget Hollywood movies, including Neil Simon's California Suite, where she delivered an exuberantly over-the-top, high-octane performance as Diana Barry, a brittle British actress who receives an Oscar nomination.
Why the hell didn't I wear my black pantsuit?
Because I am wearing it.
We should never have come. I never know how to dress in this bloody country. It's so easy to dress in England. You just put on warm clothing. Why did we come, Sydney?
Because it's free, darling.
Glenda Jackson never comes. She's nominated every goddamn year.
Although this performance did seem like it had that sort of camp quality about it, and it was a bit larger than life, it needed it, because that's what actresses, you know, there are actresses like that, and she was playing exactly that. And it worked. And her comic timing in it, that's where you could see her comic timing is bar none. It's brilliant.
What was the best picture?
The best picture? You were there when they announced it. It came after the best actress.
I was in a deep depression at the time. What was the best bloody picture?
You mean what was the best picture of the year, or what did those idiots pick as the best picture of the year?
What won the award, you arsehole?
I am not an arsehole. Don't you call me that.
Sydney, I have just thrown up on some of the best people in Hollywood. Now is no time to be sensitive. What was the best picture?
I'm not telling you.
I'm not asking you. I'm threatening you, you crud!
It is always awkward if you are an actor playing an actor, or playing, you know, even something autobiographical. You have to find the right way of doing it. But her performance in California Suite was, it was perfectly pitched.
I am going to bed. We have a 10 a.m. plane to catch in the morning.
10 a.m. is the morning. That is redundant. UAH.
Oh, do you think I don't know what you're saying? I can spell, you know.
Not without moving your lips, you can't. I would like another drink, please.
You drank everything in this state. Try and bother.
And Maggie's immaculate performance as an actress who fails to win an Oscar heralded an ironic, real-life turn of events.
She plays a character who was nominated for the Oscar and loses, but won her second Oscar for that role.
And I just think it's very funny to be nominated for this particular film, because it's very ironic, really, in a way, to be nominated for a performance where you don't win an Oscar.
Maggie Smith's Oscar-winning turn as the fiery actress in California Suite mirrors what many imagine Maggie herself is like, able to deliver a corrosive quip every bit as deftly as the Dowager of Downton.
Was everything all right when you got home?
Well, no, not really. Sprat has gone away.
Did you tell him you were coming back?
A good butler should not need to be told.
Oh, Maggie can be formidable. She absolutely can. And the thing about her, I think, is that she wants to be the very best she could be. And if anything gets in the way of that, that's when the formidable side comes out.
I interviewed her live on stage for the Radio Times festival, and the arrangement was that I had to ring her up at home before the event to tell her about it. And I was actually shaking at the prospect of what it would be like.
She used to say to me on the Harry Potter days when we were together, "I want you to come to my trailer, Miriam. You're not there, why?" And I would go to her trailer and we would just chat about nothing particular. But I have heard stories of her not being so kind to other people. And I am a little nervous of her. And she hates it when people say that.
She's ruthless. The work is the most important thing in the world for her. There is nothing more important.
Characters such as Constance Trentham in Gosford Park, always ready with a magnificently offhand, icy put-down, only serve to enhance Maggie's intimidating reputation.
Tell me, how much longer are you going to go on making films?
Well, I suppose that rather depends on how much longer the public want to see me in them.
Yes, it must be hard to know when it's time to throw in the towel. What a pity about that last run of yours. What was it called? The Dodger.
The Lodger.
Lodger. And it must be so disappointing when something just, flops like that.
Yes, it is. Rather disappointing.
Because Maggie Smith has played some pretty grand ladies in her time, and she began playing grand ladies even when she was young, people assume that she's a very grand lady herself. She isn't. She's quite a shy lady. She's not a public person. She likes to keep herself to herself. But with family and friends, she's easy, she's funny. She's not in the least bit grand.
Why have you been playing very old ladies lately? I mean, 93...
That's because I am an old lady.
Oh, nonsense. I mean, you are Maggie Smith and you're in your prime.
No. I think this is... I think it just happens. I mean, I'm always playing these sort of rather sour, faded women, and I'm always in corsets.
People say, oh, she's terrifying, isn't she, Maggie Smith? She's terrifying. And I think, no, she's not terrifying. She's an actress with edge. If you can't stick it, go and do something else, frankly.
Maggie's barbed wit and air of disdain was shared by her dear friend and fellow actor, Kenneth Williams.
I think there is a timbre and a lot of wrist action that I think that Maggie was teased by the critics for, that does have a kind of gossamer thread from Kenneth Williams to her.
I think he taught her a lot about comic technique, which she has to the nth degree. And I'm quite sure that he was influential and a good influence on her.
When some theatre critics, thinking they were being clever or possibly rude, said a lot of her mannerisms are Kenneth Williams, particularly there's a snorting horse kind of double take with the nose going back and the nostrils flaring. But Maggie Smith, as I understand it, was quite open that she picked these up from Kenneth Williams.
Would you say Kenneth had been quite a big influence on you?
An enormous influence. I mean, I pinch from him all the time.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, in black comedy, I'm doing a complete Kenneth. I mean, it's outrageous. If you hadn't seen it, you'd be livid.
1984 saw the start of one of the longest and most rewarding collaborations in Maggie Smith's career, when she teamed up with the acclaimed writer Alan Bennett.
Well, I think that they know each other so well that once you know someone like that, you can write for the rhythm of their voice, of their wit.
I think Maggie found in Alan Bennett a rhythm that really suited her comic timing. The amazing way that she'll kind of add an addendum and it seems to be in the writing with Alan Bennett.
And also, I think she found him personally, his slow, deliberate way of speaking, very droll. She found that quite amusing, Alan. Yes, she liked that.
The first Bennett character that Maggie got her teeth into was the fiercely snobbish social climber Joyce Chilvers, playing opposite Michael Palin in the 1984 film A Private Function, effortlessly and perfectly portraying the disappointment and ambition of a woman determined to be noticed.
See, this is where I belong, Mother. Put me in a long frock, surround me with sophisticated people. I'd bloom.
You should have married that sanitary engineer.
Still, when Gilbert gets his surgery going on the parade, we'll be in the forefront of this town. This is just a beginning.
A Private Function's tale of a couple's efforts to secure some illicitly reared meat in the post-war days of food rationing meant working with a different breed of co-star.
Of course, in that film, she had to work with pigs. And you think you see one pig, but apparently there were 3. And she said one was perpetually in makeup because it had a black eye. She also said, pigs are not very au fait with the word action, sadly.
It's darkly funny, and I think the pig steals the movie, in fairness, but it's such a clever, funny story to be told, and they make it believable.
Oh, I can't stand this. Look at the floor. Oh, I was quite right not to want kiddies if this is what it's like. Oh, kill it, Gilbert.
I've never killed anything in my life.
You should have thought of that before.
Whose idea was it?
Yours. Who did you think was going to kill it?
She can do one-liners well, and Alan Bennett has wonderful one-liners. One-liners that might, delivered by anybody else, would seem a bit weird, but she can deliver them with just... She believes them when she says them. She delivers them with such confidence.
Right, Gilbert. I think sexual intercourse is in order.
Maggie and comedy work like that.
Without any question, Maggie Smith is one of the funniest women in this country.
Very funny, and it's quite... I had to concentrate, and focus on a bit of a chair or a lamp or something so that I wouldn't catch her eye, because she's got a twinkle, without a doubt.
Oh, there you are, Sprat. Lady Mary's been telling me all about her conference.
I hope you found it interesting, my lady.
I learned a great deal that I never knew before.
Thank you, Sprat.
If it's just almost throwaway, that's when it's funny. And for her, it just seems like that. It just seems like she's just throwing it out there, hasn't even thought about it. That's a real skill.
Put the van in your drive? That never occurred to me. I don't know. It might not be convenient.
No, I've thought it over. Believe me, Miss Shepherd, it's all right. Just till you sort yourself out.
But not convenient for you. Convenient for me. You're not doing me a favour, you know. I have got other fish to fry.
If there's a laugh to be had, she will find it.
And she found plenty in the 1992 blockbuster Sister Act as the austere Mother Superior, displaying all her comedy credentials with a performance only Maggie Smith can deliver.
People wish to kill you. Anyone who's met you, I imagine. A disguise is necessary to protect us all. And while you are here, you will conduct yourself as a nun. Only I will know who and what you truly are. You will draw no attention to yourself whatsoever.
But look at me. I'm a nun. I'm a penguin.
As from now and until you leave, you are Sister Mary Clarence.
And without a script, Maggie can be equally entertaining.
She's an exceptionally witty woman.
She's a very funny human being, I have to tell you. She's hilarious.
She's quite sort of sardonic and takes a rather sardonic view of life, which makes you smile.
She's wonderful. It's a great joy just to sit and have a cup of tea with her and let her run free.
While 1985's A Room with a View didn't provide Maggie Smith with broad comedy, her magnificently detailed and delicate portrayal of the anxious Aunt Charlotte saw her once again nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, my poor dear girl, you are so young. And you've always lived among such nice people. You cannot realize what men can be. This afternoon, for example, if I had not arrived, what would have happened?
I can't think.
Answer me, Lucia. What would have happened if I had not appeared?
You did appear.
Oh, I have vexed you at every turn. It's true. I am too old for you.
I first acted with her in A Room with a View. And it was very interesting because she was a little remote from me. I mean, I blunderingly tried to make conversation and made the cardinal error of praising her work, and that was just dismissed it completely. What was wonderful was when we actually started acting together, we immediately connected on that level, and I knew that she trusted me as a fellow artist.
I am the chaperone to my young cousin Lucy, and it would be a serious thing if I were to put her under an obligation to people of whom we know nothing.
I don't think much harm could have come of accepting.
There, Charlotte.
So you think I ought to have accepted? You think I have been narrow-minded?
I never suggested that.
It's the kind of character in recent years, from the 80s onwards really, we have come to associate with Maggie Smith.
Coming up, we reveal the private Maggie Smith.
She is a very grand figure, but she isn't a very grand person. She's a very great actress, but she's a very nice lady.
And we delve deeper into Maggie and Whoopi's divine double act.
Whoopi is just loud and proud. Maggie Smith is much more tightly wound.
1988 saw arguably Maggie Smith's finest collaboration with writer Alan Bennett, when she played a trapped and unhappy vicar's wife who embarks on an affair, in one of his groundbreaking television monologues, Talking Heads.
Such a live wire, says Mrs. Belcher, really putting this parish on the map. That's right, burbles Mrs. Shrubsole, and looking at me. We must cherish him. We came back and I cherished him with chicken wings in a tuna fish sauce.
The great Maggie Smith, Alan Bennett monologue, A Bed Among the Lentils, is as far from cosy as you could get. It's a vicar's wife who is so unhappy. She's clearly having a mental breakdown, a marital breakdown, and I don't think Maggie Smith could have brought that kind of depth to it if she were not a classical actress.
There is a precision about Alan Bennett's writing and the gift of creating a character with a very few phrases, and he was able to do that in the monologue, which Maggie did so brilliantly on television.
Maggie has the ability to empathise to the nth degree with these characters. It's like she sort of climbs into their frontal lobes and swims about there, however divergent her life experience seems to have been.
Almighty God, unto whom all hearts be open, all desires known, and from whom no secrets are hid, cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of thy Holy Spirit, that we may perfectly love thee and worthily magnify thy glorious name, and not spend our Sunday afternoons parked in a lay-by on the ring road wondering what happened to our life.
each segment of that incredible monologue is about 7 or 8 minutes long without a cut. And she had Alan Bennett as her director. And at the end of each take, she said to him, well, what do you think? And he would say, oh, I think it was Champion. And that was it. That was her only note. And she would beg him for notes, and apparently it was like getting blood out of a stone.
Maggie remains one of Bennett's favourite actresses, owing to the intelligence that shines through every performance.
I think Maggie has the most extraordinary brain. She's quite shy about expressing everything that's in her mind, you know. She's a great reader. She's as sharp as nails about life and the world.
She is an intelligent woman intellectually. She's a thinker, but she's deeply intuitive.
But she's a witty woman. She's an intelligent woman, and she has an intelligent assessment.
Having grown up surrounded by actors, Maggie's sons, Christopher and Toby, have followed in their mother's footsteps.
I mean, when Toby saw her playing Peter Pan when he was 7, he said, that's what I wanted to do, just like her, and that's what he's done very successfully.
Toby kept his surname Stevens, but his brother Christopher changed his to Larkin, as there was already a Christopher Stevens registered with Equity.
Toby Stevens, and it's Robert's name, and he's very much like Robert, but he's got her complexion and something about his delivery that comes from both his parents, I think. And Chris is a very good character actor with no flourish about him at all in that sense. They adore her, and she them.
I've seen her at home. I've seen her with her children and her grandchildren. She's fun. She's easy. But she is one of the great ladies of the theatre, and has been for 60, 70 years. She is a very grand figure, but she isn't a very grand person. She's a very great actress, but she's a very nice lady.
In 1992, Hollywood came calling with what would become one of that decade's most popular comedies. Maggie giving an elegant comic performance as an unsmiling Mother Superior opposite Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act. Her stern features fabulously framed by a nun's habit.
It is all about her face in Sister Act, isn't it? The facial expressions, the look of disgust and disappointment that she has in Sister Mary Clarence.
There's nothing wrong with my life. You know, before I came here, I had a career, I had friends, I had clothing that fit. Before I came here, I was okay.
Oh, really? From what I've heard, your singing career was almost non-existent, and your married lover wants you dead. If you're fooling anyone, it is only yourself. God has brought you here. Take the hint.
Whereas Whoopi is just loud and proud, Maggie Smith is much more tightly wound. And that's great in terms of chemistry, the way they play off each other.
There are 3 vows every nun must accept. The vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and the vow of chastity.
I'm out of here with that. Oh, man.
I think what's so interesting to me about Sister Act and the other roles at that time is she made a decision in the early 90s. I'm now, here on in, going to play old women. And it was the sagest piece of self-casting decision-making ever, because it meant that she went from romantic lead, which she was still doing with Christopher Plummer in the 80s, immediately into the roles that would sustain her to this day. And she doesn't seem to have aged that much from 1990. It was a very, very smart move, I think.
After 23 years of marriage, Maggie found herself facing the future alone when her loyal and loving second husband, Beverly Cross, died suddenly in 1998.
I never met Beverly Cross, but I know that he adored Maggie, that he was wonderful to her, that he took care of her, and that she loved him very much, and she was utterly stricken when she lost him. It was awful.
She's quite good in her own company, but she does find it odd to be living a life where you're not doing it for somebody else, or you're not number one in somebody else's life. And she was used to that all her life, really, and needed it.
Throwing herself into her work, in 2001, Maggie appeared in Robert Altman's Gosford Park, a film that supplied writer Julian Fellowes with the blueprint for Downton Abbey. Maggie managing to make her monstrous character, Constance Trentham, hugely entertaining.
She can play a pretty unsympathetic character, but she doesn't really become unsympathetic herself. And, you know, however much Constance is waspish whenever she opens her mouth, you're still pleased when she comes back. You know, when she's back on camera, you think, oh, good, I wonder what she's going to say now.
9 years before Jeremy Swift popped up as Maggie's butler in Downton Abbey, he served her drinks in Gosford Park.
Julian, of course, wrote her into Downton Abbey with, you know, what she'd done in Gosford Park in mind. I think, however, in Gosford Park, she was a thorough snob, and she was an undermining character, mocking. It's something that Maggie does very, very well.
I'm starving. Where have you been? Sorry. Oh, they always send up a good breakfast here. I'll say that for Sylvia. She's not at all mean in that way. No, bought marmalade. Dear me, I call that very feeble.
She once came up to me and she said, what is it about marmalade? And I said, oh, well, that comes from a great aunt of mine who, in the old days, always thought you could tell if a house didn't know what they were doing. If they ran out of their own jams and jellies, it meant either the cook or the still-room maid or someone was not up to the job. And she said, I've got it. And, of course, she then went on to make that one of the funniest moments in the film.
And Gosford Park has become renowned for a rare and celebrated addition to the script by Dame Maggie Smith herself.
She doesn't much ad-lib, although we did have one example of that in Gosford when Mabel Nesbitt came into the drawing room, and part of her story was that she'd only packed one dress by mistake, one evening dress, so every night she had to wear this same rather drab dress, and there was sort of no line to cover when she was crossing the room, and Maggie looked up and said,
I don't know what I'll do. But it's so clever to travel light. Why should one wear a different frock every evening? We're not in a fashion parade. No, and I wouldn't want to be. Excuse me. Difficult colour green.
What did she say?
Very tricky.
For years afterwards, people used to come up to me and say, oh, I love Gosford Park. I said, oh, how kind. Yes, it made me laugh so much. Difficult colour green. And you know, for the first few years, I used to say, well, actually, that's not my line. Maggie Smith invented that. She said... Anyway, in the end, I just gave in. I said, oh, thank you, and let it go.
Coming up, how one of the world's best-loved actresses remains an enigma.
She's tremendously private, massively private.
How could anybody sum up this experience? I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Throughout the noughties, Maggie Smith appeared in 7 of the 8 Harry Potter films, one of the most successful movie franchises of all time, even though she has since played down her involvement in the project.
Maggie Smith is sometimes a bit self-deprecating about the work she does. She was pretty dismissive of her role in Harry Potter, saying it was just Jean Brodie in a witch's hat. It wasn't really acting.
I think she's much more intimidating than Jean Brodie. Professor McGonagall. I mean, she's ultimately a good character. She's a nice character, I suppose. But with age, I would say Maggie Smith, as an actor, has become more intimidating and has become known for playing more intimidating roles.
When I call your name, you will come forth. I shall place the sorting hat on your head, and you will be sorted into your houses.
Call me a fantasist, but I imagine a kind of golden gossamer thread that runs from Jean Brodie to Professor McGonagall. I sort of think if Jean Brodie didn't want a regular teaching job anymore, maybe she would have joined the Ministry of Magic and become this sort of haughty, magical Scottish schoolmarm.
Harry Potter, weirdly... But that did sort of change your life in a way.
Well, yes, a lot of very small people kind of used to say hello to me, and that was nice. It was a whole different lot of people.
Yes, but also so weird that they'd only know you for that one thing, like you'd never existed before.
No, I never had.
And nearly a decade before Maggie played Miss Jean Brodie, since they shared a dressing room at the Old Vic in the early 1960s, Maggie and fellow dame Judi Dench forged a lifelong friendship. In 2004, they appeared alongside each other in Ladies in Lavender, the story of two sisters set before World War II, whose quiet lives are disrupted by the arrival of a young Polish boy. Both actresses giving exquisitely detailed and sensitive performances, born of a close, real-life bond.
Oh, hello. Are you feeling better? Are you hungry?
Oh, Ursula, stop it. You look like a cannibal. Kommen aus Polen.
Aus Polen? Ja. Ja, I told you.
Was ist dein Name?
Marowski. Andrea.
Andrea Marowski?
Ja.
Ich, Miss Weddington. Und das ist meine Schwester.
Ursula.
Ursula.
I think the juxtaposition of Judi Dench and Maggie Smith is genius. It's genius because in Judy's case, you've got this sort of effervescent, sparkling, twinkly dame. And then Maggie is sort of haughty and lofty and cerebral and somewhat arenaceous. And it's a casting director's dream.
It's so enjoyable to see two veterans, two legends, act together and just do it so breezily, to make it, just to use all their years of experience and to make it look really simple and really easy.
But that was what, to me, was so interesting in Ladies in Lavender. Charles Dance, our director, coaxed out of her a performance of enormous tenderness. And she's not known for that.
What do you think of my pasties? He loved them. Thought he might. Don't forget to wash it. Drops like rain.
You know, when Andrea's able to walk, he's going to need some clothes.
Yes, I know.
I thought I'd use some of the money Aunt Elizabeth left me to get him a new outfit.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Why not use our joint account? Well, we're both responsible for him. And I was the one who saw him first.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
Although ever-increasing success has brought her a worldwide following, Dame Maggie Smith resolutely remains something of a mystery.
Maggie Smith is intensely and fiercely private, does not suffer fools gladly, and wishes to be left alone to do her work, but not to be investigated.
She's tremendously private, massively private.
Yes, she doesn't do Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. She nearly died when she was told after Downton Abbey had been seen in Japan that her birthday had received 7 million tweets. She couldn't. She was aghast. She was absolutely horrified.
She doesn't do chat shows. She doesn't do a lot of signing of autographs. She will, if you're a child and you recognise her as the witch from Harry Potter, oblige. But other than that, I don't think she sees it as part of her role.
I wouldn't describe her as a guarded person when you know her. I wouldn't, no. She's very warm, she's very funny, and she's caring and loving.
Coming up, Maggie goes from Downton to down and out.
I don't think Maggie does vanity. I don't think the greats do, actually.
In 2015, Maggie Smith resumed her 3-decade collaboration with Alan Bennett, who has provided her with some of the most challenging roles of her career. The eccentric bag lady Miss Shepherd in The Lady in the Van was certainly one of those. Her performance was remarkable, an unvarnished and mesmerising portrayal of a defiantly unconventional woman.
Miss Shepherd, in future I would prefer if you didn't use my lavatory. There are lavatories at the bottom of the high street. Use those.
They smell. Now, I'm by nature a very clean person. I have a testimonial for a clean room, awarded me some years ago. And you know, my aunt, herself spotless, said I was the cleanest of all my mother's children, particularly in the unseen places.
It's a grubby and grimy role for her. But there's a great line in the movie where I think Alan Bennett describes her vagabond nobility. And you see that again. Even when she's playing someone so downtrodden, there is still this weight about her, this nobility about her, this grandiosity about her.
And quite a strange, odd woman, quite eccentric. But you sort of empathise with her. You see moments where she wants to have just the fun that life is. You know, there's that lovely scene where he's pushing her in and he kind of takes her to where she wants to go. And you see her just whee and let go. And it's a great freeing moment.
Careful.
For many actresses of a certain age, the prospect of donning Miss Shepherd's tattered coat and ragged nightie would be intimidating. But for the fearless Maggie Smith, it was a gift.
This supremely elegant actress, who is fastidious, beautiful, dressed up, played the part of this bag lady to perfection.
I don't think Maggie does vanity. I don't think the greats do, actually. And I think the part of the longevity of a career means that you have to leave the vanity behind.
Mr. Bennett, I've worked it out. Oh, Mr. Bennett, the ideal solution would be off-street parking. You know, a driveway, possibly. Hmm?
So what are you going to do?
I play it by ear.
Astonishingly, at the age of 87, Dame Maggie Smith shows no signs of slowing down, recently donning her tiara once more for 2 movie versions of Downton Abbey.
I wasn't familiar with the TV series of Downton, and yet, because she was such a cultural phenomenon, I was familiar with the Dowager Countess, with Violet, Maggie Smith's character. I already knew about her. And she still steals the show, even in the second movie. She's not even in it that much. But every scene she's in, she's the one who gives the film weight.
Have you told them, Lady Grantham?
She's told us nothing.
Do sit down. I've come into possession of a villa in the south of France.
What villa? Start at the beginning.
Years ago, before you were born, I met a man.
They spend a few days together and he gives her a house.
You never thought to turn it down?
Do I look as if I'd turned down a villa in the south of France?
Dame Maggie Smith has spent her entire life dazzling us with her talent, both on screen and on stage. There is absolutely nothing that this magnificent actress can't do. And let's hope that Maggie keeps on doing it for many years to come.
She is undoubtedly one of the greatest of our actresses ever.
She was great then, and she's equally great now.
Always astonishing. I mean, never anything less than astonishing.
She's just one of the treasures of the English-speaking world.
Conquered the stage, conquered the movies, is still working. It's incomparable.
We need excellence. She can provide it.
Living for her is working, and that's where her life is. She's got immense reserves of determination and energy, and if Judi Dench isn't giving up, she's certainly not going to. She's not going to let her get away with it.
1988 saw arguably Maggie Smith's finest collaboration with writer Alan Bennett, when she played a trapped and unhappy vicar's wife who embarks on an affair in one of his groundbreaking television monologues, Talking Heads.
Such a live wire, says Mrs. Belcher, really putting this parish on the map. That's right, burbles Mrs. Shrubsole, and looking at me. We must cherish him. We came back and I cherished him with chicken wings in a tuna fish sauce.
The great Maggie Smith, Alan Bennett monologue, A Bed Among the Lentils, is as far from cosy as you could get. It's a vicar's wife who is so unhappy. She's clearly having a mental breakdown, a marital breakdown, and I don't think Maggie Smith could have brought that kind of depth to it if she were not a classical actress.
There is a precision about Alan Bennett's writing and the gift of creating a character with a very few phrases, and he was able to do that in the monologue, which Maggie did so brilliantly on television.
Maggie has the ability to empathise to the nth degree with these characters. It's like she sort of climbs into their frontal lobes and swims about there, however divergent her life experience seems to have been.
Almighty God, unto whom all hearts be open, all desires known, and from whom no secrets are hid, cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of thy holy.
Poto sami kasaki ko no kisiki alitama to sa puso sana ika debukeri sano kawa sota sita shukro sasono usiganiki kusemakawa buko basota papu pabuka ome wa suna ka koru ga susuki kebe nimika mo kakukugai wakaki e arus nastato. puso te resuscita Gina poto sami Kasaki kono kisiki alita mato Sa puso sana ika Debukeri Sano kawa Sota sita Shukro sasono Usuganiki Kusemakawa Buko basota Papu papuka Ome wa Suna ka Koru ga Susuki kebe Nimika mo Kakuku gai Wakaki e Arus nastato
Oh, really? From what I've heard, your singing career was almost non-existent, and your married lover wants you dead. If you're fooling anyone, it is only yourself. God has brought you here. Take the hint.
Whereas Whoopi is just loud and proud, Maggie Smith is much more tightly wound. And that's great in terms of chemistry, the way they play off each other.
There are 3 vows every nun must accept. The vow of poverty, the vow of obedience, and the vow of chastity.
I'm out of here with that. Oh, man.
I think what's so interesting to me about Sister Act and the other roles at that time is she made a decision in the early 90s. I'm now, here on in, going to play old women. And it was the sagest piece of self-casting decision-making ever, because it meant that she went from romantic lead, which she was still doing with Christopher Plummer in the 80s, immediately into the roles that would sustain her to this day. And she doesn't seem to have aged that much from 1990. It was a very, very smart move, I think.
After 23 years of marriage, Maggie found herself facing the future alone when her loyal and loving second husband, Beverly Cross, died suddenly in 1998.
I never met Beverly Cross, but I know that he adored Maggie, that he was wonderful to her, that he took care of her, and that she loved him very much, and she was utterly stricken when she lost him. It was awful.
She's quite good in her own company, but she does find it odd to be living a life where you're not doing it for somebody else, or you're not number one in somebody else's life. And she was used to that all her life, really, and needed it.
Throwing herself into her work, in 2001, Maggie appeared in Robert Altman's Gosford Park, a film that supplied writer Julian Fellowes with the blueprint for Downton Abbey. Maggie managing to make her monstrous character, Constance Trentham, hugely entertaining.
She can play a pretty unsympathetic character, but she doesn't really become unsympathetic herself. And, you know, however much Constance is waspish whenever she opens her mouth, you're still pleased when she comes back. You know, when she's back on camera, you think, oh, good, I wonder what she's going to say now.
9 years before Jeremy Swift popped up as Maggie's butler in Downton Abbey, he served her drinks in Gosford Park.
Julian, of course, wrote her into Downton Abbey with, you know, what she'd done in Gosford Park in mind. I think, however, in Gosford Park, she was a thorough snob, and she was an undermining character, mocking. It's something that Maggie does very, very well.
I'm starving. Where have you been?
Sorry. Oh, they always send up a good breakfast here. I'll say that for Sylvia. She's not at all mean in that way. No, bought marmalade. Dear me, I call that very feeble.
She once came up to me and she said, "What is it about marmalade?" And I said, "Oh, well, that comes from a great aunt of mine who, in the old days, always thought you could tell if a house didn't know what they were doing. If they ran out of their own jams and jellies, it meant either the cook or the still-room maid or someone was not up to the job." And she said, "I've got it." And, of course, she then went on to make that one of the funniest moments in the film.
And Gosford Park has become renowned for a rare and celebrated addition to the script by Dame Maggie Smith herself.
She doesn't much ad-lib, although we did have one example of that in Gosford when Mabel Nesbitt came into the drawing room, and part of her story was that she'd only packed one dress by mistake, one evening dress, so every night she had to wear this same rather drab dress, and there was sort of no line to cover when she was crossing the room, and Maggie looked up and said,
I don't know what I'll do. But it's so clever to travel light. Why should one wear a different frock every evening? We're not in a fashion parade. No, and I wouldn't want to be. Excuse me. Difficult colour green.
What did she say?
Very tricky.
For years afterwards, people used to come up to me and say, "Oh, I love Gosford Park." I said, "Oh, how kind." "Yes, it made me laugh so much. Difficult colour green." And for the first few years, I used to say, "Well, actually, that's not my line." Maggie Smith invented that. She said... Anyway, in the end, I just gave in. I said, "Oh, thank you," and let it go.
Coming up, how one of the world's best-loved actresses remains an enigma.
She's tremendously private, massively private.